How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Chances are, if you clicked on this video, that time is of the essence, so I'll keep this short and sweet and to the point. So in this video, we're talking about how to cram like an absolute beast. Now, second half of undergrad, me and my friends used to cram an entire semester's worth of content within a matter of days. And having done that in the past, I guess the number one thing that I learned is that, we shouldn't cram, but it's too late now. So let's just cut past that. Now, these are my top tips to streamline your cramming process to score the highest possible mark in the exam, given how much time's left. My first tip would be Pareto's Principle. So 80% of the actual questions will only come from 20% of your lectures. So what I would say is make a list of all your lectures and then order them according to their yield. So have the highest yield lectures at the top, lowest yield lectures down the bottom. And for the second half of the lowest yield lectures, you can even skip some of these lectures. My tips would be lectures that are from guest speakers or lectures that are extremely broad or population statistics based usually are quite low yield, whereas more lectures that are more detail focused, for example in a biomedical space, that'll be a physiology or anatomy lectures, are quite high yield. But that is a judgment call that would depend on the specific unit you're doing and the degree, so I'll leave it to you guys on that note. But that list should be extremely helpful in guiding your preparations. My second tip would be to set ruthless deadlines with how much time you're spending per lecture. How we work as humans is that if we give a task a certain period of time, we will find ways to fill up that time, right? So you have to be quite ruthless with how much time you're spending per lecture. I would say even if you're like 60 to 80% sure that you kind of get this lecture, just move on to the next one, because now time is quite short. And even if you're not cramming, right, even if you're doing it, the usual way where you're doing lectures as they go, even then, always cap how much time you're spending on any project, any lecture. So obviously I'm not going to give you like any time to aim for, but just be reasonable and don't spend too much time on a lecture. The third tip would be to isolate yourself from others, okay? What do I mean by that? I mean, majority of your peers would be more prepared than you at this point if you're cramming. And that could really have a big mental factor where you can get quite demotivated, or you might start questioning whether it's even possible. Now, I can tell you from experience that yes, people who prepare for longer periods of time are at a higher chance of success, but that doesn't mean that you don't have an equal shot at success. You just have to work 2-3 times harder at this point because you have to catch up with that amount of work. And of course, all of yours is going to short-term memory, but the exam is going to be just a few hours long. So if you're really exam focused, it's still possible. All you have to do is isolate yourself from these people, because you don't want to be hearing the, oh, you're only watching the lectures now, that kind of thing. That could really mess with your head, definitely mess with mine. So towards the end, what I would do is either spend time with people who are like me and kind of screwed like me, or spending it alone just by yourself and just smashing through it. Tip number 4 would be YouTube is your best friend. Any lecture, it's much better for you to look up the content from that lecture onto YouTube and watch a quick video on it than trying to go through those bullet points in a lecture and trying to decipher what it means in a broader sense. Those lectures were built for people who are watching those lectures, so they're basically there as reminders for the lecturer on what to talk about. And there are some really good efficient videos that you could smash out on a topic under 5 minutes, whereas if you're doing it in the actual lecture, it would take you over an hour. So obviously much more efficient. If YouTube isn't working or your topics are too niche to be on YouTube, most subjects also have other courses that are video based. For example, in the medical field, there is Pathoma, Boards and Beyond that sometimes I prioritize over my university lectures. They're just faster, and that's what we're looking for, right? My fifth tip, pretty obvious: no more notes. Questions are the way to go. You're studying for the exam. The exam's going to be focused on questions. People repeat questions. Teachers or professors usually at least ask the same styles of questions. So do those questions, or at least have a look at them, to then retrospectively circle your study routine around those practice exams or past exams. If you see 3 or 4 or maybe 10 lectures where questions were in the past brought out from, it is very likely similar questions will be asked from those similar lectures. So really, students at this point sometimes think questions are not for me because I don't have the time. I should just focus on the notes. Nope, questions are actually more important given you are kind of screwed, but you're still trying to ace this exam. So let's look at what the exam is probably going to ask you and try to prepare for that, than trying to cast this huge net and hoping the exam falls in that net. I hope this makes sense. Tip number 6 would be to get some sleep. Sleep is heavily underrated. Now, I gotta be honest, my go-to way was to double down on coffee and stay up and be in the library for 48 hours. It's not good, not healthy, and if anything, quite detrimental to your learning. You could start confusing different topics and spending more time on a lecture than you should. I reckon try to get decent amount of sleep. Of course, you won't be getting those 8 hours of sleep. Who does, right? I would say even if you can get like anywhere between 5 to 7 hours of sleep a night or a day, if you're pulling all-nighters, I think is very important. It's actually quite important to retain information that you need to sit down with it or lie down or sleep with it for a little bit. Tip number 7 is to print notes. So obviously you probably don't have notes at this point, but if you either have notes from friends or you've bought notes, print them. Don't have it on your laptop, don't have it on your iPad. There's too many distractions, and the risk of one distraction is too high given how much time is left and given how much you have to get done. So my thing is, I used to print the lectures, go to office works, get them binded, and just walk around with the notes all over the uni. I would usually just go back and forth in the library. So my phone's not on me, and I think you guys should definitely consider this. It might seem, you're saving money or you're saving time by not having to do this, but I think printing these notes just has a different feel to it. If you don't want to print notes, the next best option would be to have an iPad or a laptop, but make sure it's completely on do not disturb. Try to use some app that blocks you from going on certain websites, because if self-discipline isn't strong enough, it's very unlikely you'll be able to get this done. Tip number 8, again, about notes. I would say I was pretty lucky in terms of that. A lot of my friends who were up to date would give me and my friends who are cramming their notes to use. If you don't have any notes from your peers, the next best option would be to jump on a website like Student VIP. You could actually buy notes from past students who've done really well on that unit, and oftentimes they're much better than the lecture slides, again because the notes they wrote, it's like they're explaining a concept to you because they would have written those in sentences, whereas the lecture slides are in bullet points. So it's kind of like having a peer trying to explain a concept to you. It always makes more sense than trying to make sense of a concept in a lecture. You could also preview the notes, so you get to see the first 3 or 4 pages, and that'll give you a good idea whether these notes make sense to you. And they're also verified in terms of that they usually scored pretty highly and they put their notes up, and they're also usually not that expensive, and the money is obviously going to another student, so it's kind of a win-win situation. And at this point I think it's something to consider. Definitely over writing your own notes. Don't write your own notes right now. Notes are low yield in general, but especially now, notes are not the best. Try to be question focused as much as possible, but if you think notes will be useful, either consider buying them or try to get one from any of your peers. Alrighty guys, I hope you found these tips helpful. I won't keep you for too long. I know you've got some stuff to do now, like cramming the entire semester. I hope next semester is better. Ideally, we won't be cramming because obviously the degrees we're doing are meant to be used in the future at a workplace. So this was me in undergrad when I was doing biomed. Currently in med school, cramming, I don't cram at all because I think there's no point, right? Because I know in a few years I'm going to be asked to use what I learned at a really high stakes situation. So hopefully as you transition, as you mature in your learning, cramming stops. But at this point, things happen. It is what it is. I hope these tips are helpful though. And let me know how you guys go with cramming. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this content and looking for more study tips. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. See you guys.